What should a non-citizen expect when she or he is being removed from the United States? I'm Dan Ringer, and we'll talk about deportation right now on The Law Works.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
The Law Works is made possible by the generous support of the West Virginia State Bar, the Monongalia County Bar Association, and by a major grant from the West Virginia Bar Foundation, promoting public knowledge of the law in West Virginia. The West Virginia Bar Foundation, the philanthropic organization for West Virginia's legal profession and justice system.
If you're not a citizen of the United States, you live in fear of being deported, even if you haven't done anything wrong. What is the process? What kind of help's available? My guests are attorney Robert Whitehill and Alan Matt White, a college student at the WVU College of Law. Bob, Matt, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks for having us.
We're going to talk about deportation. What is it?
Well, deportation is a judicial process, generally a judicial process, through which a non-citizen is caused to leave the United States or to answer for being illegally here or allegedly illegally here and seek relief so that he or she may stay and normalize his or her status in the U.S.
So the deportation process is not purely a process to throw someone out of the country. It may be a process where they are legalized and allowed to stay in the country too?
Absolutely, because there are, while statistically most people who face removal or deportation are removed or deported from the United States, there are reasons why people are able to seek the opportunity to stay. Relief from removal is what we call it. For example, a person who has a claim for asylum, if he or she would be deported to a homeland where there would be persecution based upon religion or political opinion, that may be the basis for staying in the United States, even if someone has violated the U.S. immigration law.
Does it have to be an asylum matter from the time they first arrive here, or can it become an asylum matter after they've been here? I'll give you an example. There's a lot of turmoil going on in the Middle East.
Exactly.
And governments are changing their orientation over there. We'd like to think, I suppose, that most of them or more of them are becoming democratic than they may have been in the past, but that remains to be seen. But if a government has cooperated with the United States, has sent their citizens over here to be educated or allowed them to come, they would be here legally, they might come and go. But at some point, if there came to be a rift between the two governments, they might say, I don't want to go back. Because I've been here now, I'm tainted back there and I may be subject to torture or punishment of some sort. Is that allowed?
Well, it is. Typically, the rule is that one must affirmatively file for asylum within a year of entry into the United States, unless there's a material change in circumstance, either in the person's homeland or in the condition that that person will face upon return home. Asylum is based upon a well-founded fear of persecution on account of a person's race or religion or national origin, political opinion, or being a member of a particular social group. So it would be certainly possible for an individual from one of the countries that currently is having a breath of freedom or enjoying a revolution, to say, I can't go back there because of my political opinion. I will be persecuted because of whatever it happens to be.
A lot of people would say, do say, if you're here illegally, you should be thrown out. You shouldn't be allowed to stay. You should be punished for coming here and doing that. But people have a lot of reasons for coming, and reasons for coming illegally. How do these people come to the United States, and why?
Well, the reasons why are as diverse as the population that comes to the United States. I would say that if one were going to like my ancestors, they came for freedom, freedom of religion. There are people who come to the United States because of a need to leave an oppressed and persecuted environment. Now, most of the people who come today are not coming for that reason. They're coming for employment. Statistically, about 80% or more of the undocumented aliens come from Mexico, and they are coming here principally for economic reasons. And they're coming here illegally. This is a general statement, but they're coming here illegally because the ability to come here legally doesn't exist, which is a very significant, I think, defect in our immigration law.
Matt, you served in the military in a significant amount of time in Iraq. You were in the National Guard and you were deployed over there. Why would people leave? And it sounds like a silly question, but why would people want to leave, for example, from Iraq to come to the United States?
Well, based off of my experiences, I think it's completely, the situation over there is completely different than the situation over here. There are very many more opportunities for education, occupational advancement, things of that nature, or just religious freedom. As Bob indicated, it's the, excuse me, the reasons are so complex and diverse, and a lot of them don't want to come here to stay or don't want to come here at all. I mean, it's just part of the human dynamic of different ways of thinking.
Kind of like you didn't want to go to Iraq, but the human situation sent you to Iraq.
Yes, it's very similar to that.
You're here because you're involved in a course that Bob is teaching at the WVU College of Law. What is that?
Yes, the WVU College of Law offers an immigration law clinic for indigent people in need of representation in the immigration field. It's the only aid available for people with this particular need in the state of West Virginia, and it serves a very good function. It helps out a lot of individuals that are very good people, hardworking people that if people got to know, I think that they would have a better view of immigration as a whole.
But still in all, Bob, if they're coming here illegally, we just ought to throw them out. Who are the people that we do throw out? What are the classes of people who are eligible, if you want to use that word, for deportation?
People who have committed crimes. Now, not all crimes result in removal, but a large number of people who are removed because of commission of crimes. But the number of people who are removed because of commission of crimes is probably small in comparison to the total number of people who are subject to these deportation proceedings. Deportation proceedings can be brought by the government for a very technical violation of the law, can be brought by the government because there has been a change in law which negatively impacts that individual. There are 18 different, and that may not be the right number, but about 18 different grounds of inadmissibility, a dozen different grounds of removal. So there's a whole host of things that can result in a person being subject to being deported from the United States. One thing I want to say is that these processes require due process, allow the appointment of an attorney at no cost to the alien, and are civil in nature, not criminal in nature. And so a violation of the immigration law, by and large, is a violation of a civil law rather than a criminal law.
So someone who is being prosecuted, it's a civil case, so I don't know if the prosecutor's the right word, being processed for deportation is entitled to an appointed lawyer?
Is entitled to an attorney at no cost to the government.
At no cost to the government.
Right. And so the vast majority of people who are in removal proceedings don't have an attorney, and very few of them have the benefit of having law students like Matt and his colleagues from the WVU Immigration Clinic representing them and pursuing their rights.
I practiced law in West Virginia for nearly 33 years. And although I think there are attorneys practicing immigration law, at least in some part, in the major law firms around the state, I'm unaware of any small or sole practice attorneys who swim in those waters. Immigration law is complex, highly complex, and I've always felt that it's best not to do it unless that's all you're going to do, because there are so many ways for the law to change, so many procedures that are not like the procedures that we find at the county courthouse when we're there for any kind of a case. So if these people are entitled to have an attorney, I guess on their nickel, unless they can find somebody who's willing to volunteer to do it, where do they find them?
With great difficulty. There are not many immigration lawyers, and there are even fewer pro bono immigration lawyers or immigration clinics.
Pro bono means that the lawyer is working
For free. Yes, for the good of the public.
The problem with that is they still have to feed their spouses and their children, so there's
do.
not a lot of that work that they can
That's
do.
right. And the immigration judges, I must say, are very desirous of having lawyers volunteer their time to provide representation to these individuals. Not that the judges will do anything that's improper, but they are solicitous of immigration pro bono attorneys.
We're talking about deportation. My guests are attorneys Robert Whitehill and Alan Matt White, a college student at the WVU College of Law. I'm Dan Ringer, and this is The Law Works. It does seem, when I look at the procedures, and we'll talk about procedures here in a moment, it does seem as though the ordinary person, and that means the ordinary American citizen or Canadian or Mexican or whatever country you're talking about, without some significant legal education, isn't going to have much of a chance of being able to deal with the immigration process on their own.
I think that's basically right. To give the government its due, and the rule of law its due, many immigration judges reach out to the alien, reach out to the person who's accused of being removable, and will try to help them identify grounds of relief, if there are grounds of relief. And so there is some humanity in the system. There are judges who are willing to help people, again, not give the store away, but as a general statement, if you've got a removal case, you need a lawyer.
I know many judges have talked with many judges about what it's like to deal with somebody in their court who is not represented by an attorney. And all of them, to the person, have expressed thoughts of wanting to make sure that that person's rights are protected, but they can't do it for them. They can only suggest, they can only hint that you ought to do one thing or the other. And if the person doesn't understand what you're saying to them, it's not necessarily a matter of language, although that can be really important in immigration-related matters. If they don't pick up on it, there's not much that the judge or anyone else in the courtroom can do.
That's certainly correct. Moreover, and there are many cases where there's nothing that can be done. There is no relief. The individual has violated the law. There has been a technical violation, and there's no relief, and the person will be deported.
When you say technical violation, what kind of problems are we talking about?
An individual comes into the United States and overstays his or her visa. A person comes into the United States. I'll tell you a story.
Stories are good.
Okay. So a woman and her son come to the United States. The woman is the fiancée of a man from West Virginia. And she comes to the United States on a fiancé visa. The son comes to the United States as a deriving benefit from her mom, his mom, at 5 years old. The husband and wife file necessary petitions, and the wife becomes a permanent resident of the United States. The wife stays in the United States and becomes a citizen of the United States. One fine day, they wake up, mom wakes up, her son has not been changed from the visa that he came in on at age 5 to being a permanent resident or a citizen. And this technical problem has a result that this young man, now 20, is facing deportation. It's a technical violation. It is turning their lives upside down and stopping short this young man's life at age 20. In part because Matt's sitting next to me, I should say, this is a young man who wants very much to be in the military, and he can't be.
Because he's not an American citizen.
Because he is not a
Lawful permanent resident. One can join the military without being a citizen if they're a lawful permanent resident. But until that adjustment of status has been made, they cannot use the military as an avenue of citizenship.
So this problem could be identified because he goes down to the recruiter and says, I want to join up.
Absolutely.
And they say, well, prove you're an American citizen.
Or prove that-
or here, you're here legally. And he doesn't have anything. He never had anything.
All along, from the age 5 to age 18 or 19 or 20, gee, I thought I was a U.S. citizen. I thought my mom took care of anything. I woke up one fine day to find out I'm going to be deported from the United States unless something really extraordinary stands in the way of my deportation.
Where would he be deported to? This is where he's from.
This is where he is from. But he would be deported to the place from where he was born, which he left at age 5, to which he could legally return to nothing, to a language he doesn't know, to no family. It's a technical violation of the law, which may have, and hopefully won't, catastrophic effects.
But you know, as far back as Rome, if someone was part of a territory that the Romans conquered, or came into territory that was controlled by Rome, if they joined the military, they had a chance to become a Roman citizen. They had to serve sometimes a very long time to do that, but they had a chance at citizenship. Just because this young man wants to serve in the military and gets caught, he has kind of nailed himself and is not only going to not be allowed to serve in the military, he has no chance of becoming a citizen, and he must leave the country to who knows where.
Well, we're going to try to keep him, this is a real case, we're going to try to keep him in the United States, and hopefully we'll be successful. Congress has, cases like this have come to the attention of Congress, and Congress has not been able to pass a law known as the DREAM Act, which might address situations like this young man's and tens of thousands of others. Maybe Matt can...
Well, and there doesn't have to be any military component to those cases. There are lots of those cases where someone who does not know they're not here legally or not a citizen, may in fact think they are, goes to enroll in a college or to accept a grant or a scholarship, and they find that they can't because they're not here properly.
Right, there are tens of thousands of these people. At the university right up the street, I dare say there are hundreds of students, I don't know this for a fact, but who are undocumented.
We're talking about deportation. My guests are attorney Robert Whitehill and Alan Matt White, a WVU College of Law student. I'm Dan Ringer, and this is The Law Works. Well, okay, how does deportation operate? The government finds you or whomever they want to target and says, okay, you're subject to deportation. What happens?
Okay. So deportation is possible for anyone who is not a citizen of the United States. That's the first thing. So a person who's a long-term permanent resident or someone who just arrived last Tuesday would be subject to removal. Removal is a judicial proceeding. What happens is that the fact that the individual or the allegations the individual has violated the law is processed through U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The individual is given a complaint called a notice to appear. The individual then has an opportunity to appear in front of an immigration judge and to plead to those allegations, yes or no, or government please prove it. And there's a pretrial. and the grounds for relief, if there are any grounds of relief, are identified. Now, some of the individuals are free, others are able to be released on bond, and some are subject to mandatory detention and may not be bonded out. There is a hearing in front of an immigration judge, and if it gets that far, the government is represented by an attorney, district counsel. The alien may or may not be represented by counsel. There are no rules of evidence. It's not really a free-for-all, but there are no strict rules of evidence.
For practicing lawyers, the phrase "no rules of evidence" is scary.
Right.
Things like hearsay is admissible.
Yep.
Rumor and innuendo would be admissible, or at least the judge would listen to it, hopefully give it such weight and authority as it deserves, but would still be there. And if the subject, the person who's subject to removal, and removal and deportation are essentially the same thing.
Yes.
Doesn't understand the law, doesn't know how to ask questions, doesn't know when to stand up on her or his own behalf and pound the table or pound the law or whatever is on their side, they can just get swept away in the tide.
Certainly. They can certainly get swept away in the tide. And frankly, some lawyers who are trying their best to help aliens don't do them a whole lot of good, because they get swept away in the tide as well because of a failure to understand some of the subtleties of the law. Now, generally, if a person has a lawyer, that person is going to be 100% better off than that person who doesn't have a lawyer. And if the person doesn't have a lawyer, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's no chance of success, but as you suggest, it's dramatically diminished.
Well, where does it go from there?
Where it goes from there is that at the end of the testimony, the immigration judge will give his or her opinion. Yes, no, maybe. And either side has the opportunity to appeal. There's an administrative appeals body known as the Board of Immigration Appeals. And from there would be an appeal to the United States Court of Appeals for the appropriate circuit. And then from there, very few cases go to the U.S. Supreme Court, but there's an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. Usually the decision of the judge is not appealed, and if you win your case, you're happy, and if you lose your case, unfortunately, the individual is subject to being removed from the United States. Now, removal sometimes will mean that the person will be taken into custody, and arrangements will be made for that person to be sent back to his homeland. In some instances, people are not able to return to their homeland, and that creates long periods of incarceration and sometimes release from custody because of the length of time it takes to deport somebody. Immigration occasionally will have a heart, and there will be a compelling case, a really compelling case. And they will say, this is so compelling that we believe it's in the public interest. There's an order of removal. Person lost in court, but we will let that person stay here.
What kinds of cases are compelling?
Well, actually, Matt's working on a case now, and maybe he can give you some of the non-confidential details.
Yes, we have a Mexican that migrated here several years ago, and he has two young children who are both hearing impaired, and to such an extent that they would not be able to receive the proper medical and educational benefits that they can here in Mexico. He would be up for cancellation of removal had he not left to go back to Mexico and get married for 2 weeks, because the rule is that you have to be continuously in the United States for 10 years. And he went back to Mexico to get married for 2 weeks. He came back, so that is not a avenue that we can use. So once a year, we have to petition for a stay of removal, temporary stay of removal for 1 year.
So because he went home to get married, he interrupted the time he was here, albeit illegally, and he's not eligible to stay here because he's a nice guy and he works hard. He's got a couple of kids.
Wonderful, wonderful person. Great kids. The family's amazing.
Well, Matt, thank you very much for working with the law clinic. Bob, thank you for teaching it. There's a desperate need for attorneys practicing immigration law, and it's tough to practice. Thank you for being with us.
Our pleasure.
Thank you also for being with us on behalf of the Law Works. I'm Dan Ringer. Good evening. If you have a legal problem and want to know if you need a lawyer, you can discuss your problem with a lawyer by calling 1-800-642-3617 Tuesday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m. That's 1-800-642-3617. On the LawWorks webpage at thelawworks.org, you'll find a listing of recent The LawWorks program topics and additional information about this show's topic. If you would like to recommend this program to a friend, you'll find a video of the program at the LawWorks website. You'll also find free video and podcasts of previous programs on YouTube and iTunes. If you would like to suggest a topic for a future program, or if you're a school teacher and would like to receive a free copy of this show for classroom use, send us an email to thelawworks@comcast.net.
The Law Works is produced in cooperation with the West Virginia State Bar, the Mountain State Bar, and the West Virginia University College of Law. The Law Works is made possible by the generous support of the West Virginia State Bar, the Monongalia County Bar Association, and by a major grant from the West Virginia Bar Foundation, promoting public knowledge of the law in West Virginia. The West Virginia Bar Foundation, the philanthropic organization for West Virginia's legal profession and justice system.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.